with spirit of matter. And this is a very Venus. It's a Mars day, but Venus, our ascendant ruled by Venus in 17 Taurus, and Venus right on the midheaven, 2 degrees Aquarius, between Pluto and Venus in 3 degrees Aquarius. So that is interesting. The moon is now slowly applying to Chiron. Um, and I actually wanted to talk about Neptune. So I know Venus is exalted in Pisces. She is separating from a trine to Neptune. She's trining the nodes. She's exiling the nodes and trining Ketu, which I like. She's applying to oppose Mars. And yeah, we have some fated Venusian events. So we can call on Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, but also goddess of love and war, to guide us. And the Deneb Alkedi, because she's in the sign of Aquarius. So, the conjoining of Venus and Deneb Alkedi, which we will have this month, or next month. Deneb Alkedi is about wealth redistribution, okay? It's about equity. Venus is about relationships, about beauty. Venus in Aquarius is the type of beauty that is unusual, and Aquarius pays large attention on being authentic. So I really love Venus in Aquarius for peopling, because Aquarius is usually, I love it when they say about Aquarius, they love humanity but they hate people. I don't know if it is always true. Maybe you have a Venus in Aquarius, it's not so. But Venus in Aquarius allows you to just enjoy connecting, or enjoy, I call it peopling, because it shows you how it pays more emphasis on just being friendly, I guess. It is having enough distance to allow a connection to form without too much stress. If I think about like the person was very close friend for a decade for me, that was an Aquarius. And that takes, a lot of detachment, but also ability to connect. And Venus is lovely for that. She's lovely for peopling. America has moon Aquarius, and American people are known to be very friendly. They may be friendly with a bit of detachment because they care a lot about their, privacy or private space, or just individual life, and it can come across to people as, as superficial. But actually, it's not necessarily so. Aquarius sometimes is associated with the underdog, and I don't know whatever the fuck that means. But the joy of company of people that are not necessarily think the same as you can be a very Aquarian facet. And I've noticed that some Aquarians have so much competence at facing opinions that are completely different than their own and living side by side to that. So I just find it a quality I really, really appreciate about this sign. And yeah, so Venus here is kind of enjoying to do peopling. I really like this time. So right now I'm at the airport with my correctos. And it's funny because I was thinking to talk about Neptune Rahu. But I also have this kind of, hey, Venus in Aquarius needs to be talked about because She just ingressed, and I have to say, I didn't even notice she ingressed into Aquarius because it was, the synodic cycle with Pluto opened, and it was a very deep synodic cycle. But now, Venus is going to be in Aquarius. What I noticed, Aquarius has also technology. I had a beautiful experience because I was editing my photos of my face, and what I noticed is that you can play with like the shape of the face, the size of the nose, the size of the eyes, the distance of the eyes. And I played with that, and the more I played with that, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually satisfied with how I look naturally. And I think it's a lot of Venus in Aquarius because you have the chance, you have the leverage to do something technological or to alter something, and you can pick and choose from that what you actually enjoy. And in a roundabout way, it kind of gave me something that, let's say, the Venus Libra didn't, because Venus Libra is all about balancing act and so on, but it's something about Aquarius that authenticity, they can recognize beauty and kind of like, hey, I only need the makeup and the lighting, and it's just to accentuate my own beauty. But that being said, I really enjoy the makeup apps because as a person that find it challenging to do makeup, I think for the first time in my life I put a gel on my brows, and then it kind of struck me the fact that it stays put, and I feel like something stuck on my brows. So that was my Venus Aquarius experience. She opposes Mars and Leo, so I don't know what it means, because hard aspect between Venus and Mars can just mean sometimes even attraction, an opposites attract kind of thing. It's not necessarily always easy because Mars has to adjust to Venus, and depending on where Mars is, that might be more or less challenging. Because with the Venus-Mars, you see, it's like Venus, and this is a fixed axis, so Venus is kind of, she's drawing in, it's the energy of drawing in and connecting. And she can't get out of herself, otherwise she's betraying herself, and she's not wet, right? So, but for Mars, it's a question of how much can Mars adapt without losing its own, and that can be a friction. It can be very frustrating for Mars because there's some, especially with Aquarius, even Aquarius has the, because of its equity, it has the I'll meet you halfway kind of quality to it, but it has to be cautious about detachment. And there is the question of kind of like when Venus and Mars can meet each other halfway without losing themselves. So I'm not saying hard aspects between Venus and Mars are terrible. They can be intense attraction, by the way. There's also going to be friction and frustrations. But I think the Mars hard aspects are more challenging because it kind of means like our ways don't go together. Whereas Mars-Venus can just mean, okay, there's erotic challenge. And the beauty about the erotic challenge here is that if we don't take Pluto into account, which we cannot afford ourselves to do right now, but just Mars-Venus, it's not necessarily easy, but on the long run, if there are other supportive aspects, it can be a beautiful attraction that stands the test of time. There are good Saturn aspects and stuff. The fact that Venus is still separating from Pluto and that Mars is still applying to Pluto gives us a type of erotic challenge that we don't necessarily want to overcome at this point. Because it's confrontation, direct violence, and that's not very juicy. But let's just talk about this. Yes, Venus. She's separating from a sextile to Neptune. And Neptune always adds a dreamlike quality or even a sedative quality. Right now we need Neptune. Let's just take a look a little bit at what will Venus do in Aquarius before I go to Neptune. So we can get to the monthly astro calendar. Let's talk about Venus. Let's concentrate on Venus right now. Concentrate on the good stuff. So she's sextiling the nodes, opposing a Mars on December 12th. She's going to trine Jupiter towards the end of the month, December 20, and a sextile Chiron. You want to be looking up for the December 24th, Christmas. The uplifting point is Venus is going to sextile Chiron and trine Lilith. And then December 28th, she's going to square Uranus. So that's something to look forward to in Christmas. Because I said this Christmas is not going to be gezellig. It's not going to be cozy as we expect it to be. It is even quite explosive. And especially particularly around movies, right? Because we have the B6 so Uranus is explosions, and Neptune is movies or espionage. And yeah, we'll talk about Neptune later. So I will address the many things that are happening. But what I love for Christmas is the Venus. First of all, she's slowly applying to Deneb Algedi. It's not going to be a conjunction, but it's definitely nice to call on Deneb Algedi. And in that context, it can give a sense where if you didn't feel beautiful, you might feel more beautiful. If you didn't have relations, you might be more relational, more connection-y. Again, Mars is opposing Pluto. I wouldn't necessarily start a commitment, but if you're like in a commitment and you know your relationship is kind of been forgotten, that is a good time to relight the fire, okay? That is a good time to feel more beautiful. Aquarius is also associated with Finland, and I liked it when I saw that the Finns use beauty routine of just going to the sauna and have a natural glow. I find it very Aquarian. So you might go to a sauna or something, I don't know, and get a natural glow on. So I like that for Christmas. The sextile with Chiron is fantastic. Chiron is on Andromeda. So I know that Mars is still ruling Chiron and is still opposing Pluto, but if we hone in onto Venus a little bit and we call on Deneb Algedi and we call on Andromeda, you see there's a lot to remediate even in long-term relations, because Aquarius is a fixed sign. Even if you've been like married or something like that, and there are many financial conflicts. There were just so many financial conflicts going on this season, and regardless of your situation, okay, you might be single because of it. You might be, for example, I have the asteroid Ubermensch next to my 7th and 4th house, and my housing, like I had a spy for a landlord, like really dumb fuckery things. They're very challenging. But Venus sextile Chiron can be very remediating of places where we had an ouchie, okay, we had a wound around even our sovereignty. And through Venus we can remediate, we can address that. She's also trining Lilith and in Libra, and I like that for this transit. I like that there's something that we can tackle in a way that is more amiable through Venus. The topics are still challenging. Mars is applying to really perfect its opposition to Pluto in retrograde motion. Saturn and Jupiter square, okay? Mercury on the 11th degree of suicide and electrocution. Bashar al-Assad, I think, was announced dead or exploded with a plane on the day that Mercury was retrograde on that degree. So there's so many things going on, and it's not like it's going to be sunshine and roses. It's rosy, but not roses. And Venus in Aquarius can somehow have a sort of detachment where you can address that and you're like, hey, what's been that all these things that's been in my life, and you can even say, okay, I understand the fact that my sovereignty is kind of being bombarded with deep financial conflicts of changing economy, um, and it ain't my fault if I haven't been glowing too much in past season, or it ain't my fault if I felt, or a little bit of detachment, and the can bring us the equity. Can kind of remind yourself, even if you're a man, okay, you've been single for a long time, it's like, oh, well, all the women are programmed or they don't want to hear about you. And and that's just a genuine reality, okay? You're not being too picky, you're not being a snob. And it could also be if you've been in a relationship, and you can see how the reality of life and the reality of the changing economy is affecting, okay, our inner glow and our sense of connection. So I think it's going to be more about radical acceptance with Venus, that, hey, that's the way things are. And within that, there is a little bit of a spark, a little bit of an amiability that returns to our eyes, where we can just accept the circumstances and tend to that ouchie. And I think we might have more tolerance through Venus to that Lilith that is coming to, change the course, purge the course of time, change the way that we've been doing heuristics, that we've been doing trade, that we've been doing beauty procedures even, that we've been thinking about, even, sex work, or things like it's the oldest profession, blah, blah, blah. So is being a king. We are purging that at this at this time in history. So we've always had a chief, a king, a boss, a this, a that. In Aquarius, we kind of like, fuck that. So we might, with Venus here, be more understanding towards the people that say, yeah, that correlated with that. I just think about the fact that I'm half Dutch, and I was, when I was exposed to the, creation of sexpionages and what the red light district actually really is, I was like, oh. Then also in Netherlands, like, and how that affects our lives, our intimacy, our, day-to-day connections, the expectations from society. Venus is also possessions, and Aquarius is kind of, when I think about Aquarius, it's where everybody puts their bags and shoes and everything in one place. I think about Netherlands and bikes. I don't know if it's a good delineation astrologically, but it's just an example that I have where my mama, when she traveled, she was like, how do people know where their bikes are? Okay, there's just the piles and piles and piles and piles of bicycles. And you think about that as Aquarius. You think about the mosques where they put the shoes outside. And I remember my father and mother, when they visited El Aqsa, they didn't visit for the inside, but my father saw all the shoes, and he says, how do people know which shoes are there? And they're like, well, think bicycles, right? You're Dutch. So Aquarius. But another thing is, when my mama was going to meet my father in Zwolle, he was serving in NATO, there was all these young men with the same haircut, and for the first second she couldn't see who is that. So this is also Aquarius. There is the commonality, but the fact that We are just a part of humanity and we want to stand out at the same time. And there is this funny juxtaposition between the common good, the commonwealth, okay, everybody just throwing the bags, throwing the things, throwing the that, and forgetting about it, and forgetting about their stuff, and we're going roundabout and making neurological experiments with not bumping into each other, and so on, and that's very sweet, but it's also the outcast. So I don't get that about Aquarius. It's a pack of outcasts. And unlike Aries, because with Aries I noticed that you would think that with Aries it's going to be marginalized of the world unite, but no, that's Aquarius. With Aries, everybody has their own type of marginality, and it's true to Aquarius as well, but the sense of the common good is something that's less, with Aquarius it's kind of like, I'm different, you're different, all of us don't like for the way that other people are doing everything, and it's kind of like everybody's unique just like you are, and so on, and it's just a lot more, I think, tolerance or even sheer interest in different things, different people. There's this detachment, whereas Aries has been outcast, but she wants to join the club. And I think that the sextile, the quasi-sextile we have with the end decan of Aquarius to the Aries right now, with the end decan of Aries, right? So it's kind of, Aries is on Andromeda, and she begins to be welcomed in the club that she wanted to join. Okay, the place where she's been outcasted. And then she finds people rape people, people betray people, people mistreat people, and just like you're sitting at the table of deceit, and you're like, the fuck am I doing here? But the lovely thing about the equity part is that yes, Aries is included, but there's also a need to change for the society, and everybody begins to understand that those changes are actually needed and they're actually feasible. And that is something that I really like about this Christmas. So I'm not going to say there are not going to be conflicts, but the fact that Venus is in Aquarius is kind of partaking in that conflict and allowing that conflict to be with a little more detachment than we usually have. And there, of course, I have to tend to the dryness in my eyes again. People steady try to frame you, but I don't fit in any frame. Yeah. So that would be Venus in Cancer by Helwa's Astro. It's very green, and I love it. So yeah, that is one thing that we'll see Venus doing. Of course, you will be applying to square Uranus and December 28th, which means money flying out of the pocket. If you remember my money flying out of the pocket astrology. And that's the end of the month. So of course we're going to be having the Deneb-Algedy square Beta Persei and the challenges between them, and that's going to be money flying out of the pocket because of that. So there's a crisis between the need to distribute wealth evenly and the need to protect our possessions, of course, and the need to have psychic and sexual sovereignty. Okay? And you say, why on earth would these two collide? Well, let's talk about housing and resources and food And let's talk about the bathroom scandal. Because the bathrooms, think about LGBTQ and the bathroom scandal, and that's a genuine scare for people, because if people carry certain trauma, Aquarius is kind of like this detached kind of thing. It's like, hey, women rape women and so on, and it's usually happened with people that you know very well, unfortunately, and or that have a rank in society, or the people that don't look like it. And it's like all these rationales, and then there is trauma. And how should we shape the space? And there was another scandal about the fact that the two genders were with the disabled. Like there was the women and the disabled. What happened to my feet? God damn. People steady try to astral rape. This is so fucking dumb fuckery. I just think about celebrities right now, because there's with Pluto finishing up in Capricorn, there has been this inverted pyramid where we got to understand a little bit more of what the famous people are dealing with. And that means psychic attack, astral rape, because where everybody began to have a picture on social media, and people became woo-woo and tried to manifest the financial freedom, the secret, the this, the that. Okay, everybody's Scientology, and then because they ran away from the Masons, and then, you know, every business began to have sex bots. They used to have just the sex bots, but now they do an entire MK Ultra. So I don't know what it's like for public figures, but from my perspective, first of all, it's nice because you have, at first you kind of had way more interaction. People would do live on Instagram, and yeah, that's the train. So they would do live on Instagram, and you'd get to actually talk with people without a lot of mediation. You know, back in the days when I was an X-File with the PH, we used to stay up in the middle of the night and wait for the chat room that was 7 p.m. in United States. God damn. In order to get a chance to, I don't know, get a glimpse of, okay, a chat room. And well, nowadays, there's a lot more proximity, and people can get in touch with how they affect the world with less problem. And I don't know, because I would predict that to cause less troubles. Cause it's the more Aquarian it is, the more it's like you can connect to a person on a human level rather than the glow thingy level. And I think this is a lot of, you know, if I think about the time where Rao was in Leo, which is the polar opposite, and we had the Me Too. So the opposite of that is where people connect to each other on a more human basis, and there's less hierarchy as there once was. So for some people, maybe it means, you know, less fame and adoration, or you're being seen more as a person, with both the pros and the cons of that. And people would give you space because they would give you space like a normal human being. Whereas where it's extremely solar, then I guess, I don't know, that would cause a lot of, I think, weird interactions and isolations that perhaps with Aquarius is less so. But then we had other problems where the problems that the new problems of the celebrities, that the public figures that began with both in politics and in media and in entertainment, and they began to go on YouTube and to do shorts just like the common people. And it's not about the descendants from fame, because I think now the actual the human level of being a person and not just being a celebrity or being a politician, the human level, there's more connection and there's less of the old paradigms. Also psychologically, people are less isolated, okay, on the one hand. And then it became more people got the sense of being public figure because we have all of our photos, and our photos are edited, and you can edit videos, and you have your public persona. And then both celebrities and business owners and content creators, the like, began to be bombarded. So the people, kind of like the new public figures, I remember for me, before Twitter turned into X, and I think we are beginning to embark on the Neptune conversation now. Before Twitter became X, then I had Illuminati in my DM, and it kind of reminded me of the old internet where you didn't know who is anybody. And I really liked seeing Elon asking, "Who? I don't know who is a real person." It's like he created the system, but it's also kind of like the output. And I don't know who is a real person here. This is just so human and authentic question. When you go on the internet and you don't really know who is who, and everybody who these days, right? So it reminded me of the old days of the internet. I remember when I just heard about in high school about the the assassination basically of Left Eye and Aaliyah, and I think it was around the same time. Heard it on the internet, and I was like, that's probably fake news. I was like, no, that was real. So this internet level, this new form of media connection, you kind of, if you don't know to navigate your way there, and I found it quite interesting to see how some public figures begin to try and navigate this world. And at the same time, for the common people, it was also a new form of navigation because we faced celebrity problems. Suddenly we had Illuminati in RDM, and if we weren't responsive, we were shadow banned. And then I see, let's say people began to do tarot because tarot was booming. And then you began to have the occult symbolism and channels that you didn't see before. And then you hear about influencers being invited to parties and then going through horrid rituals. So it's kind of like, wow, to think that celebrities been going through that shit. And even if you would hear something, it would be like it's a conspiracy theory because the world is set so much distinctly apart. And so if in the Me Too we're like, oh my God, how the celebrities, they use their power, they use this, they use that. For the opposite of that is like, my God, these people are tortured since childhood. And there is worlds apart from actual commoner, okay? And so there are two ways to bridge this experience. One is the fact that, in the Raul Leo days, then influencers began to have reactions. For example, my very, very humble channel that I would have like 14 viewers, and then I did some interviews with astrologers, and they're like, oh my God, I was so happy to see your content. Finally, some different astrologers than what we've been seeing before. And I was like, oh my God, you're one of the 14? You're one of the 14 viewers? And people are like, I'm really inspired by how you upload videos. And I'm like, but nobody watches. And then I began to understand of how it works. And so if you have like a community or like people, then you would have promotion, but it could be like, 60,000, 100,000 people that you don't know. And then you would get Elon on X asking, is anybody real right now? Okay, saying, hey, could you post some nice design photos, some nice this, some nice that, or for what the atmosphere that he would like to see. And people are very busy bashing him, but it's also kind of like an anthropological experiment where different societies meet different societies, and that intermixes with the secret societies. I love watching, and I love watching that diversity. Okay, the Aquarian part in me really enjoys that. Um, the part where you're targeted for astral rape is kind of like I could skip that. um, but you see, if one way to bridge those experiences is the fact that I could be a really humble channel, and then some people would target me because I said something on social media that nobody watches. Okay, thank you for your likes. Um, but I can understand that so much of the image of what we've been seeing has been plain image, and how um, the sense of isolation is kind of dissolving, um, and my experience as a person who's absolutely not coming from like a celebrity public figure of that level is that the social engineering that goes around every interaction arrived at my life, and I was like, oh my god, now I understand a slight fraction of what these celebrities are going through, because your entire life is social engineered. People have so much emphasis because you are public opinion influencer, then, or people try to recruit you, or they see talent in you and they want to you have no idea the amount of effort to try to get me to do the 2 sign for several years. I'm like, I don't consent, I do not consent, I never consented. Okay, I'm sure that a lot of people, they would do the finger things and they would not understand what it is. Okay, at academia we were told that this is victory. For some people, for the whistleblowers, it said it's victory, or it's for the whistleblowers. It's only until I watched Trudy that I began to understand a little bit more. In attempts to have initiations of secret societies, I was just doing a channeling experiment. Okay, it only when I watched Elizabeth April, where she said she was born with the ability to astral project and so on, then her father took her on a conversation and told her, never try that, never share what you see, the government will take you, da. And I see that, oh my god, they were actually the booming of, and this is arriving at Neptune, because the booming of, what you think about Neptune in Pisces, so many people began to have more facets of reality being experienced. So whether it's telepathy, sensory perception, astral projection, shared dreams, remote viewing, okay, the things that only people in really closed circuits would talk about, they began to be the experiences of the masses. And then of course there were masses of global agendas trying to harvest on the common person. And I think that as we approach with the Neptune Rahu, the thinning of the veil between many people, and including public figures, celebrities, is really thinning. Okay, and the understanding there's so much social engineering that goes even to the dream work of each and every one, and to create betrayals, to create disputes, to make you think that somebody is seeing you that way, make you think somebody is seeing you that way, framing attempts, the attempts to control for the image, and for the people that are influencers and public figures, they also have agents, and there's so much goes into that, and into managing a certain image that is quite tremendous. Especially when you appeal to giant crowds, and there's so much research that's done around that, and everything has to be so controlled. So when So when these celebrities began to open their own Instagram account, their own YouTube, okay, first of all, we got the Britney Spears that was later, unfortunately, quite harassed by this yellow ribbon, okay? And I think the people that are public figures, they know about this perhaps even more than we do. And, you know, we have the yellow ribbon with the hostages in Israel, and that's not. And I don't even know to what extent that people can't talk because they're threatened and so on. And I think around Pluto and Aquarius, we're going to be having a lot more discussion, a lot more openness, and a lot more bridging of these worlds that wasn't there before. And that goes together with the dissolving of the hierarchy. Now, I got the Berlin Wall dissolving with Saturn, Neptune, and I listened to Gracia Tassio. Bless me. So I listened to Gracia Tassio, and she talked about the Saturn, Neptune. She said it was in 1917, with the beginning of World War I and the Russian Revolution, the second one. And it was in 1989 that there was a near crisis. I talk about the Berlin Wall falling, JFKs of the world unite. But the good, not that they're working for the dark JFK, okay? But now it's coming up that JFK was actually really admiring of Hitler. So who knows, okay? Remember I did a synastry of Hitler and JFK. So I love doing that stuff. And it was, and it is going to be in it was in 2001 with the 9/11. So anybody that see me talking about the 9/11, but you see, this is a few degrees from my true Lilith, and I got the 9/11 on the sex scraper, okay, on human trade, it's 9/11, and you see that's manifesting, I don't know, not God forbid to have people dead or anything like that, but it is dissolving of a wall, dissolving of trade centers, and for me it's next to Lilith, but it's going to be in 0 degree Aries, which is a very potent world degree. I don't wear rose-colored glasses for this one. Of course, it's going to be gigantic. It's going to be everywhere. Something bricks, something China. China wall. I don't know. Okay, I don't have predictions because I really don't know. But that's what was in the past. But I think the dissolving of the wall is also off for the networks of what we have been seeing, anything Neptunian. And Neptune, as a natal Neptune midheaven, it's very interesting for me to say for what I say, but the elements of longing, something missing, the dream state and manifestation. So one of my favorite musicians, for example, is Darren Hayes, and he's very Piscean, although he's Taurus. And as a young boy, when he was abused, then he would be dreaming, let's say if he was running away from people, he would be dreaming he was running away from Fan. He's a very famous person. And dreaming about a home. And he began to manifest a lot of his career and a lot of his success with taking that deep sadness and through the fantasy, through the imagination, turning it into real. So the fantasy and the real is something gigantic when it comes to Neptune, okay? But also when Neptune Saturn is the ideation, the dream, and the reality check. It's not necessarily the breaking of a dream, but can also be the incarnation of a dream, okay? For example, If I think about when Elon bought X, and it was just like you could write to Elon and he would address that in his page. And that was like, oh my God. And at the same time, the satanic ritual abuse and the testimony of D, and it was not just like the sexual harassment, it was like the death camp of the expendable children. It's like it's all coming up. And the fact that that these business people are used to make like a new world order and so on. And it's like both of the reality check and the incarnation of like, when would I get to talk to like the richest person in the world, and say what I'd like to see for that and that happening, and then see a post that actually is, addressing that. That's something. It's like, oh my God, what is happening? This is incarnation of a dream. It's not just the breaking of a dream, but it's also the reality check. Okay, it's like, hey, did you know that those billionaires are under a lot of mind control? They are used to create a new world order. They are used to enslave humanity. And they're also people. And they were born into torture and torturing. And they want to have fertility farms. Like, it's all of that coming together to the forefront. And that is, I think, a part of the thinning of the veil, the dissolving of the walls and the restrictions. What it's actually like in a place that we're so distant from reality up until now. So I think also people within cult that they never meant a person exocult, because there's so much social engineering that even if you would meet people, it will always be orchestrated, it will always be engineered, and so on. And when some of us are kind of like reluctant, it's like, I don't want this, and we've been pushed, and then there's somebody's just standing in front of you, and they're like a huge celebrity, and you see kind of like, oh my God, they have entire world around them is social engineered, even to the dream state, and then for you as well. And you're like, it looks almost like those religious families that try to do matchmaking and nobody know what is going on. And this is a part of this thinning of the veil. We had public figures being canceled. When, for example, Jordan Peterson, he was canceled, and he pops up talking against psychiatry, and I'm like, going from the fuck is this dumb fuckery with because he was really angry at many things, and overly ideating the cult of the academic whatever. But then it's like, I was talking against psychiatry. It's like, oh my God, for depression, another type of nutrition helped me. These psychiatric pills, they don't help me. And I was like, oh my God, yay, Jordan Peterson. Or you would think of me going, the WEF, that I get like, do Ruth's chart. I do Ruth's chart. And I'm like, oh, that's a person like he lived alone. And I'm like, oh, finally, the last taboo in Netherlands for a person to live alone. I'm like, yay, Ruth, a gender contributor to the to the World Economic Forum. And you see, this is a part of this thinning of the veil, where we meet people on a peopling level. With all the things that are associated with being born into these satanic ritual abuse death camps and surviving them, which means, and that is used, and the various perspectives that intermesh with all that. I was thinking about intergenerational relations, not just trauma, but relations. For when the Me Too was, I saw how intergenerationally the women that were years above me, they didn't get it sometimes. They were like, that was the usual, or that was a compliment, or that bugged them, but they never spoke up. And it took them a while to understand what is the Me Too. Like, we were sensitive to that more so, or the generation, they're like, the Pluto Sag, they're so ecosystemic and they connect with nature in ways that I never, well, my family is half Dutch, so what my mama learned from my father is to do a picnic in nature and to appreciate nature and we would sit by nature, and our family still, they travel all the time, and they would just go camping in nature. You know the Dutchies, they take the coffee from home, the this from home, the that from home, and they do picnic, and the Italians hate that because they make no money. Okay, but it's about you're gonna live the simple life, but you're not going to save yourself the connection to nature. And I saw the generations that are younger, they are connecting with nature in ways that are way beyond how we're connected with nature. And when people talked about climate depression, I thought at first I was joking a laugh, but then I was like, no, they actually mean that. And I'm like, me with what they would consider seasonal depression in the beginning, joking a laugh when people talk about climate depression, is like, that's pretty much the same thing. But that's the initial reactions, like, why are they so sensitive? And now when I think about, let's say, public figures where they go in these death camps, and like people are like, no, rape is murder of the soul, and they're like, who knows how many times they've been raped in their lives. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's like two different worlds. Because if I think about what the time I was talking about, the fact that, in Netherlands we have assisted deaths, and most cases for mental cases are people that went through incest and sexual assault and stuff like that. And I think about the public figures that they went through these death camps, okay, and they still find joy of living. And so that's another sort of thinning of the veil, which is the human interaction. And Saturn beings are very real. So there's the gloominess of, hey, think about Marilyn Monroe, her joy. Oh my God, I was talking about it in 2017 because I was just being exposed to that. When I first heard of Marilyn Monroe, it was 2007. And I looked her up on YouTube, and I was like, she was the sexiest woman on earth. And she's so glowy, so beautiful. And I was like, but why does she seem so bitter and angry? And even when she sings a song, nearly the only songs that she sings that she's happy is like Tiger, Tiger, and the very sexual songs. And then I would later read about her, and I learned that she only had her first orgasm in age almost near the death, okay, of her life. And she was abused, and actually she didn't quite have good interactions with men, always looking for like to be loved and to be like a father figure and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I understand why she's so bitter. And she was in terrible surroundings. She was trying to incarnate something that's pure, that's innocent, that's sexually innocent and pure, into the foreground, and to enjoy her sensuality and her sexuality, even though and if you think that's just so relatable for women, well, no, men are going through the same things. And when I think about people saying I'm 52 and I just learned to feel safe in my body, it's like, wow. And I'm kind of like an in-between. So you think about the fact that the genuine relation, let's say in previous generations, if somebody found relation or was a fan or something like that, people saw it as limerence, people saw it as like a beginning of a psychological problem, okay? Whereas when we think about what these people are going through and how it affects the masses, that the masses sense that, and also they sense the masses, and they write songs and create things that are relatable to the masses. They think like, no, there's actually genuine relation. And interlaid with that is the ability to sense things that are all across the board. So you think about acting as a form of becoming and sensing. It's the juxtaposition of being and non-being. And it's kind of like a channeling being. And that is so very relatable because it touches on the fabric of society But I'll tell you, so much so, it can be that really the overall stories for society are truly channeled within the acting person. And that is, I don't know if it's method acting or what is that or how do they do that, but unfortunately it's done with great torture. And a part of what is beings or entities or dissolutions, they are the actual fabrics, and there is a genuine shamanic healing quality attributed to that as well that I'm only beginning to understand. The sense of relation is very real for me, as when I think about in 2007 when I was doing some music, and I felt that my lowest of lows, people were really watching me and really loving it. And I was like, I hated the fact that it's like I'm down low and people were like appreciating that, but I didn't understand as well that they were relating to me and I didn't know that. I think it was only when I was writing about terrible, what I didn't know was CPTSD because of this MK Ultra, that I had following interaction with another musician that was with the cult, I guess. Then suddenly a veteran, a war veteran, said that nobody described what he felt the way I did. And I learned about PTSD through veterans. You can imagine my rage when I see like Wasserwander cults that they try to, create division. But for me, for the actual connection, it was I write my soul and somebody connects to that on a very deep level. Unfortunately, it was through trauma. And I think we're going to be having a lot of this thinning of the veil. With the cult, I learned that there's so many inversions. You get the inversion of psychology, the inversion of psychiatry. If you get a pill that helps you, I bet is sugar pill, and you're being told that is, or it's something that we don't know about, and you're being told that is the same beta blocker that they give to people, that they can't move their body, they can't poop. And then there are people like, that expose the psychiatry, and then they expose the celebrities and the influencers, where they really create a distinct world for each and every person. Okay, if I remember when I was reading Feynman, he was talking about dating, and he didn't know for how to hit on girls. And of course, you don't meet a lot of exo-cult girls, even in academic structures. And he learned techniques from the cult on how to hit on girls, which is trauma bond. And he describes his experiences like, I lose respect for these girls because the more bad you treat them, the more they're responsive to you. But this is the way these girls were programmed, and they were basically programmed to be sexpionage, to spy on him. But he would be considered, because he masqueraded himself, he was a lecturer, professor, he masqueraded himself as a student and went to the bar to meet girls, but he didn't know there's an entire orchestrated world that would bring this girl and that girl and that girl to later extort him. But these girls were also raped and tortured. For example, when Hans Samedma smuggled his wife outside of the Mole X, back then it was Demic, but it's just a structure, Supreme Court. And he turns to Peter, and Peter can't do much, and he has to vouch for the guy that did that, And at that point, he talks, Hans Amendment talks about his wife, which was forced marriage. He said, but she denied me sex, and she's such a whore, and she's such a this. She has sex with all of these people. And so I was like, no, she doesn't have sex. She's raped by these people, and she's programmed. But when she's going back to her, she doesn't even know how to access the will and consent. She doesn't even exist. The need for have like a dissociation in order to have sex, or the sedation and stuff like that. And I think the thinning of the veil is also around these experiments. When I was just thinking today about people being in situations where they're drugged up, and they would find themselves in all types of circumstances. Obviously, there would be minors And this is intense trauma for the life of that minor forever. And the minors would be programmed, if I listen to Annika Lucas, to set urges. And this is like, it's a world where nothing you knew about the world compiles. And you don't even know where to begin to untangle that. And you think about being an exo-cult, people going through despicable traumas that take decades to recover from. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg of what the people that within these societies are going through. And they always will have the inversion of therapy, the inversion of psychiatry, the inversion of psychology. Because when the war veterans began to acknowledge PTSD, they basically opened the gap to talk about something that is psychological, that is exposing MK Ultra. So the next stop is psychic, and boom, there you go. Neptune in Pisces, people were paying courses to learn how to affect each other's dreams. I actually saw a course to how to have shared dreams with people, okay? And so there's both the good and the gigantically terrible around it. So it breeds addictions, but it's also genuinely something missing. And you think about Neptune as the longing that entails something that is missing, but it's also a miraculous form of almost ethereal healing that you receive through the acting form, through watching a show, through a channeling, through energy encounters, through channeling. So it is both that and that. And you see, sometimes the encounters that you didn't have in the physicals can be more real than many encounters you have with people in the physical. When we understand the dream state and trauma and the missing and the longing and limerence and all these things, and we combine them together, we don't let one paradigm rule over and kind of like monopolize over our dream state and the way we understand, the way we create art, the way we communicate, then we can begin to comprise a more complex reality that allows the cleaning of the veils and encounters to be actually intimate and genuinely healing. And it's also what can you expect and what can you not expect. Okay, I remember when towards my end of my first degree, there was a person that was talking to me on OkCupid and actually hit on him, and he really wanted to arrive to Israel to meet me. And so not only there was a security risk and so on, but there was a genuine, hey, there is a lot of longing towards meeting me, but it's also the what can you expect, okay? It's a long distance, like, hey, you meet a person, and I think with Saturn we're gonna have to have a very reality check, but for some people they're gonna be incarnation of very long distance coming into the forefront and actually meeting, actually talking, and having actually meaningful encounters. There can also be separations, because Saturn can also mean endings. And so it's a reality check. Okay, for example, when I began to talk about MK Ultra, I had to deal with one of my favorite musicians blocking me because I mentioned it on his channel. Okay, that could be for various reasons. Maybe it's a trigger, maybe they fear for their life, maybe that I don't want to talk about it, maybe many things, okay? But it's like, hey, I had to deal with some sort of ending that I'm not going to compromise discussing those topics, and whoever is coming with me along the path is coming with me, and whoever wants to dissipate and dissolve and maybe even protect themselves, it's okay, and to let that go. But so you think about how that has been something that is, even the action is creating a very real incarnation of something that is an encounter of worlds that weren't discussed before. For example, I had my very good friend, and very good friend is not because we would talk a lot, we hardly talked, but we understood one another on a level that nearly nobody understood, because we were both dealing with the cult in the academia, and nobody talks about cult in the academia. And when I said Masons, that's when I lost her. But that's the cult, but that's when I lost her. And it's her right to protect her space, okay, her life, or I don't know what. And I was like, okay, she might not be going with me. For the next road, for the next crossroads, or for the next part of my journey. So we're gonna have mythical endings, okay, but also mythical incarnations and encounters. Saturn, Neptune is the beginning of something as much as it's the end. A conjunction is a hard aspect, the beginning of something as much as it is the end of something. Think about the Berlin Wall fall, okay? And the beginning of something as much as it's the end of something. The dissolving of the walls, the thinning of the veil, and the what can we expect out of each other, what can we not expect out of each other. Okay, if you have, let's say, long distance connections, and they can be really truly meaningful encounters, and you have to understand that Neptune is parameter for miraculous healing, surrendering something, and then sometimes what you thought was the end is not the end. Okay, for you, let's say you stop talking with someone, but then you encounter them in energy or in the dream state. And sometimes for the other way around, okay? Because it's a hard aspect, it's going to be a very mythical incarnation of a dream, but also breaking of a myth. And I'd like to address it less as the breaking of a dream and more the breaking of a myth. For me, for example, I remember when I would see Michael Jackson, okay, when I talked about, like, you know, the dreams of fame or doing something, or incarnating my dreams or doing music or whatever, and was seeing what his actual face looked like. And also when Beyonce was wearing the Michael Jackson style, and she did a lot of her white, black, I think is very inspired. She's been inspired by Michael Jackson all her life. And she's as controversial as anybody, okay? When you think about independent woman, I worked hard and sacrificed to get what I get, you don't understand that sometimes it may be sacrificed humans. Okay? So it's both the reality check to the dream, the breaking of a myth, but the incarnation of a dream side by side. And the understanding that, hey, look at what these people are going through that are in those places. When I see in Israeli celebrities Noah Kirel, and when I see AI versions of her, and she looks exhausted, and she's still very beautiful, and she's still competent, and she still speaks up, and she's like inhumanely competent and talented and beautiful, but also I see she's so exhausted from this fame thingy. And I think we had a conversation, I think around the 1990s, or when TLC on stage said, we fucking broke. We had, you know, the understanding that the thinning of the veil and what we don't know about what looks like glamorous life, and what looks like it's all shiny, or on another note, you know, yeah, also on a wealth level, okay, there are many things that we really don't know, the uptick and the downtick. And Neptune is a lot about surrendering on that level as well. Um, and there can also be incarnations of the dream. Okay, if I think about it, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and you see Van Damme, when I looked at his chart, I said that this person is also a great dramatic actor, and I didn't know for other things that he did other than, Double Impact or Hard Target or for those things. And he was also a great comic actor, just fantastic actor and martial artist, a genuinely martial artist. When you see him fighting and so on, like he genuinely does the craft like I think hardly anybody did in later days, okay? Or you think about Tom Cruise that insists on doing the stunts. So, and then when you see that, and I would see him in a dramatic role, and then when the chart incarnates in front of my eyes, and so that it was a very, very impressive. So again, you can see how sometimes what you thought is just made believe is actually not at all. It's one to one to one to one to one what is happening. I know that having Neptune Saturn, sometimes people would think that I'm a bit made believe. And I just surrender that. And I don't try to prove myself to anyone. And then I did have people awestruck when they meet me in person. So sometimes it would be like, oh my God, you are real. Yes. But Neptune midheaven can give that because it gives a mythical, elusive quality to the person. There's like, it's like the dream state or the psychedelic state. And so sometimes people, can think that you are actually making this up. And I'm like, no, I'm actually, this actually happened, okay? It's actually me, this actually happened. But if I remember when I met people that I haven't seen before and that knew me either from internet or what, there was this mythical, it was like I would be having star-like quality to them, where I'm just a person, but it's also enjoying that star-like quality. That I wasn't even aware of until you see the person, they're awestruck, and you don't understand why. Yeah, and I think that's especially funny when this happens with people that are famous, because I would just do me. And sometimes people would come to me to the crowd and they're like telling me it was just so inspired them or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I had no idea why that simple act of me being honest inspired people. But that is, and also to take into account that there's just so many things orchestrated around us, okay, on every encounter. I remember when Annika Lucas talked about when she was, unfortunately, with child trafficked, when she would meet politicians and, kind of like big people. And the thing is that she was programmed in a way to seduce them, and they were meeting a side of them that would never loved before, that had a lot of power over them. And she was programmed to convince them to do stuff as what was the agenda. And then, of course, she would be dissociated and go to a handler and deliver information. So there's tremendous abuse towards her. And when I ran into type of sort of public figures in that level, I noticed some of them would be like that the player layer would be like a coping mechanism of a person, because they don't know if you use espionage. And so some of them would try to groom you, and some of them would try to play you, and they try to get the interaction under their control. And it's like, I totally get why, but it's also like it totally backfires. It's like it's very human, but it's also kind of like I had to enforce my boundaries there very strongly. And especially with it, I think about I wasn't dating people because I didn't feel like being with all these boundary talks when I just want to flow with someone and not having and to be safe, to be invulnerable. And then you would have this, me connecting with me in the astral, and then I'm not alone. And then I have to enforce all these boundaries. And I think this is probably not real. And then I see a certain interaction. I'm like, oh my God, there is somebody at the other side that felt something. What the fuck was that? I don't know. I'll never get to talk to them. Maybe it's not even safe. Okay. So, and that is a work that is done on on all sides of that equation. That's another facet of the thinning of the veil with Neptune. So you think about a movie like something missing, healing, but also limerence, also longing, also it's like all the things together. Also espionage, also drugs and organized crime. Um, Attempts to paint the person like they're imagining, and so on. Or sometimes you think you're imagining, then you're like, oh my God, that was actually real. With Saturn, Neptune, the closer they get, we're gonna see. And I think Stephen Forrest described that very, very well. When he talked about Saturn and Neptune, he said, we used to think of Saturn as the reality and Neptune as the dream, and we are facing a situation where Saturn is the dream and Neptune is the reality. And so that is something you want to be considering as things begin to unfold. For example, people would think, oh, the government would never listen. What the government has no time to listen to everybody. This is also what I thought when I thought about spying and so on. I said, yeah, the government doesn't need my information, has no time to listen. Like, it records these things, but who will ever look at it? And that was like, no, they're actually machine learning technologies that create a simulation. And now you have to adjust the algorithm, not just on YouTube, but literally in your dream state and in your waking life. And I'm like, oh my God, that means that influencers, politicians, business people, celebrities have been growing into that. And that's a part of, like, yes, from the womb. So what I love about this thinning of the veil, that we are genuinely being spiritually and realistically prepared for the thinning of the veil. Okay? So it's not about, and the mythical meets, the transcendent meets the rational and the realistic, and the realistic is transcendent, and the mythical is rational. That is the conjunction to me. And so you think about a person who is acting or going into a role and doing a movie, that role becomes real. It's not for nothing that actors develop later the personality traits of their characters, because that is so very real. As a person who did channeling for a channeling experiment, I can say that there's certain things that are embedded in me, and it's almost like you get to know a person and you become somewhat, the energy is becoming, whether it's the voice, whether it's the thought process. I'm still me, but I'm also influenced and affected and embodying that which is the other. And of course, that would be in my way. It doesn't necessarily mean for in their way. And sometimes I would see that on others. I would see, this public figure, when they would think about, let's say, Michael Jackson, then I would see the energy of Michael Jackson in them. Or that person, they're connected to their sister and their spouse and their mother. And it feels like the sister and the spouse and the mother are kind of like, I don't know to differentiate the energies, and the energies merging. Or father and the son, and the energies merging. And this is such beautiful captions when you get to see them. And then, of course, there would be an interlay of sex bots sitting on every comment or every interaction. Okay, I once wrote down, you see, the next thing is for these bots before the sex bots, because there would be the people who say, who pretend that they are their mother, they're this, they're that, and say, well, right now I only need to be introduced. I don't remember what it was to this family member, and I'm family, because every time I would write something to up and up, then they would have for the another person, family member, yes, we want to have a special meeting at this and that, and we would just laugh at it and block the accounts, and the celebrities would ask us to block the accounts. Um, and some people, I think, are a little bit new to that. It's like this is an anthropological, but now when they make it with the MK Ultra, it's even more dramatic because they would put you in a role in a movie inside the other person who responds to, like, this goes way, way beyond just, sex bots and people who say, beloved, I have a reading for you. One of the ways that MK Ultra failed me when I was doing the channeling experiment is that he told me to turn to people in private and to offer them a reading, which is exactly what would get you blocked. So that was done on purpose so that I would be shadow banned on Instagram. And I was just channeling, so I was like trying this, trying that. Yes, of course, it was my decision to listen to one channeling or another, but it is also interesting to understand that that was the agenda behind that. Whereas I was trying different things, and I would have, of course, that had implications that I was shadow banned. Fine, okay, then the shadow ban dissipates as you change your behavior. But that was a part of the thing that they did, and then I was refusing the Illuminati, and so I was shadow banned. And after the war, 7th October, then naturally being half Israeli, half Dutch, wunderbar, chef's kiss. So some people wouldn't talk to me because I'm also Israeli, and and they're like supposed to be on the red team. Like, the red of Marxism is Rosicrucian. That's Rothschild, so okay. um, and then it comes down to the point where nobody talks to you, but you write a post about something to do with Elon Musk company, then later he addresses that, or you do a prompt and later he does that on a post, and you're like, that's very, very funny form of hidden power. So that was Pluto at the end of Capricorn for me. But now the thinning of the veil is really drastic because people no longer pay attention to the celebrities that they used to pay attention to, okay? It is the rise of the type of public figures that are people's person in general. And so, but you think about the people that are that genuinely are, that they generally don't take being celebrity that much to the heart, okay? And I know it's very difficult because it's very difficult when when there are masses of attention, it is dissociative. And it's not about being megalomaniac. It's just like there's a dissociative quality to that. And I think Aquarius is going to be assisting with that. But it's not going to be the same galore that it was with the Leo, because it's opposite to Leo. If I think about an Aquarian is a person who would talk to a celebrity or to a politician or to a businessman, but the same way he would talk for the cleaning person in the hotel or the homeless next door, and so on. And And this is where the thinning of the veil can be quite quite relieving for people who enjoy that, and quite tremendously heartbreaking for people who miss that being courted, or the round of applause, or the many things that the deep appreciation. Okay, it's a different sort of appreciation where you're seen as a commoner, but it's like you are appreciated for the person that you are, or for the value that you have to bring person to person. So if I think, even when Aquarius is associated with tyrannical people, okay, then you think about the satellite TV for Kim Jong-un, you would think that he would be this severe dictator, that this, that. You have no idea. It looks like movies. MASH with Kim Jong-un. This movie with Kim Jong-un. Okay, he is like the body. There are there are gigantic sets of rules around this, but when you think about his persona in the television that they are forced to watch, he is playing, characters. He's doing acting, and he's doing this, and he's doing that, and he's with the war, and he's with MASH, and he's with this, and a lot of appreciation for America as well. I know we recently declared war on America, but you want to watch the satellite TV, okay? Satellite TV from North Korea. And it just looks outerworldly. So it's the combination of this outerworldly royalty, but it's a lot like the childlike persona of a Kim Jong-un. Okay, now of course it's not that Kim Jong-un is your buddy, but it's the public or the celebrity persona, where it's kind of, and if you think about Kim Jong-un himself, of what we know about him, he likes to drink, he likes to smoke, he likes to make jokes, okay? So, and he has Mars at 22 Aquarius. I don't remember sun sign, but yeah. Yes, but it doesn't mean, how the truth to say, it doesn't mean we need to high-five Kim Jong-un. But this is this type of media, social media, where the many attires, I'm half European and half Israeli. In Israel, you speak in private names. I learned that this is also this way in Finland. In Netherlands, it's very interesting, because you would hear people, let's say, speak with the endearing form, but the private name with the endearing form to even politician. I never saw this before. Okay, if you say Geert Wilders, would be Geert Wilders or Petertje. Okay, and this is even more endearing than we're used to in Israel. Whereas in Germany, I don't know with politicians, but they would have very formal presentation. And the respect to uniforms and so on. So I think every culture has it a bit differently. With Aquarius, don't expect the Capricornian respect for uniform. And I think very Aquarian would be Finland. I think also Romania, but I don't know enough about the culture of Romania. So perhaps, other astrologers can teach us about that. But with Finland, I noticed that they call with the private name, and there is no hierarchy. So the CEO would be sitting with you in the sauna, and everybody has a say. So you think about that type of thinning of the veil is something that I'm actually looking forward to, with the Neptune, Saturn trining Pluto, sextiling Pluto, and the sextiling Uranus. And that is to be able to speak to one another with the thinning of the veil. And this is also, I think, that those public figures that once had to fear, like the paparazzi, or being stalked, or being that, like we're all equally fearing the global government, whether we are Klaus Schwab or Mark Rutte or the common person or, the homeless in the street. We are all equally stalked by the government. Or Elon Musk, okay? Now, I have Aquarius 12th house. Usually, hello there. Hello. Usually, that would mean undermining yourself. So that means that the way in which I would undermine myself is be Aquarian. But now, fortunately, we're heading to the spirit of the times, where being Aquarian is actually the spirit of the times. Okay, because now it's taking your power back. It's the reality check that you could be the Queen of England. I mean, right now you couldn't, but at the end of the day, we're all people. Blue blood, red blood, we bleed. Oh, we all bleed, right? Fuck. And another facet of Neptune is that Neptune is also associated with drugs and pharma. So you think about the dual nature of drugs and pharma, the many facets of it. You think about the thinning of the veil between organized crime and the common people, but also what our politicians, our leaders, our celebrities. Saturn rules law, but the particular type of law that's to deal with debt and investments, okay? Jailing, okay? The type of law that could be criminal law, because it's the type of law you would be in a confiscated place, okay? The type of law that can take your rights, okay? The Saturn effect of law, the restrictions. And you would think about that and the dissolving of the law, the organized crime, the big pharma, but also the common people, this espionage, and the thinning of the veil around that. In Israel is literally people are being expected to practice the qualities of a spy. And I saw that also with CIA. Many people teach courses of like, what can you learn from espionage to your daily life, and to have the skills of espionage and so on. And as usual, I'm kind of rebellious also towards that. I mean, of course, there are things that are good for you to know, but you see me addressing profiling quite a lot here. Especially when I understand that that's a difference where you live in a nationality and you are one of the people that are not targeted with the profiling, whereas other people are. Okay? And so I think Israelis felt that a lot around airports, more so than in other times in history. And then I remember I watched the Yes channel on YouTube. They're also like, MK gets to everybody, but it was very interesting content. And one of them was coming from Egypt. And it was such a sad story that he couldn't travel with them to all the places because his passport was just weaker. And just showing that all across the board was something that was given a lot of, reality checks for when you have a strong passport or you have a weak passport. For example, with Israeli passport, I could not travel without visa to United States. And the process of visa is quite lengthy, especially as an adult. As a child, I had 10-year visa, but we didn't travel. But as Dutch, I could just travel. I don't know if that would be smart to do, but I could just travel. Okay, with Dutch, if my passport was not issued in Israel, I could just travel to Jordan, to Iraq. I see Itchy Boots, and she's Dutch. Hello. And she's traveling everywhere, including everywhere, and the Dutch passport is very strong. So, or at least was until now, I don't know. Um, so we're gonna be seeing a lot of endings and beginnings regarding those things as well, okay? The Europe without the border controls. So I remember Europe when it just got to the euro, and I remember Europe before the euro, okay? I remember Hilden and Mark, okay? When Hilden and Mark were not two politicians, but actually the currency for Netherlands and Germany. And so I'm that old, okay? But I remember we started with the euro, and I remember okay, the joy of traveling. You could travel. It's like, are we in Germany or are we in Netherlands? Well, look at the architecture. Look at this. Oh, well, next to the border, it's almost the same architecture. Um, and that was very fun to travel this way, and it made it possible. Also, when it comes to the weather. Okay, right now, my mama complaining. She was like, we couldn't do the traveling that we did because now with the car you would get swiped out. There would be flood, there would be tornadoes, it's just not possible to do what we did when I was 17. Okay. And so you think about the border control coming back to Europe. And the grand Europe, the liquidated Europe that we knew is no longer. So you think about the end to that form of all across the board, but it's also a beginning of all across the board in another way. Okay? For example, if I write to municipality or to government officials, right now, if I need like to do something with taxation or something like that, a person would answer me with a Chinese name in Hebrew. Okay? And it's not about, it's not about the good or bad. It's just kind of like there are different type of things going viral than they used to be in the past. I think about 89, where we had a lot of people coming from Russia. Okay, so there was kind of like a flood of newcomers. I can imagine that after the Ukrainian war, a lot of people coming from Ukraine and Russia. It was both to Israel, but Netherlands, okay, when they put them in ships, because there was like no place to put them. So that was the way that people had to treat people back then. And then, people complaining, it's not enough, it's not this, it's not that. And seeing the reality check, what it's actually like to be in Netherlands when it's so infused with refugee life and all the crime associated and the drugs associated. Unfortunately, Neptune is about missing, people going missing. I have been tending to the fact that instead of using remote view to find people, and we actually have starting for that, but let's say to channel people already kidnapped, it is used to target individuals. Okay. Neptune is isolation, so we're gonna have ending to a lot of hostage situation. And it can be various types of endings. But with that situation, sometimes even if death, sometimes that it ends is sometimes, at least it ended. But it can also be ending to hostage situations. And unfortunately, beginning of other. So, okay. Neptune has a duality quality to it. When Neptune was, for example, around my ascendant, there were tremendous attempts to kidnap me side by side with inevitable ability to escape. Um, yeah, and getting to know of a person who was very famous in the Netherlands. One of the things he was known for movie-wise, which is also Neptune, was the kidnapping of Mr. Heineken. So I definitely tended with my entire being to Neptune when it was on my ascendant. So much so that I understand why people think that this is an illusion, because I look like a psychedelic experience. And I bet I feel like psychedelic experience to a lot of people. Or the fact that I got to work with the Tema Mundi, which anyway is an exciting experience, because and I know you say, Shirley, you're an exocult, you worked with the hardcore of the core of the core of the, but then Corvanauce of the core of the Masons, which is the Tema Mundi talisman, which, by the way, you can see also in the episodes of Misdaad Verslaggever with Natalie Holloway for the symbolism, and you can see also on the Michael Jackson Dangerous cover, and many places where you begin to pay attention to this occult symbolism. But it's the funny way in which it happened, because the first talisman I ordered, I got acquainted with I was looking for Magnum Opus, and then it was a book, and then I was confronted with Opus Dei, and I began to learn about everything MK, including Peter, and and then Trudy was talking about Peter Rabbit Hole, and I was like, which Peter? Our Peter? Then Royce on RTL showing the picture of Peter on the plane with Corvan out, Hollandier, and doing the peace sign. And I was like, unsere Peter. That unsere Peter. So, ons. And that was inescapable, okay? So you talk about the incarnation of a dream and the breaking of a myth, okay? At the same time, so Neptune brings the juxtaposition of worlds, and because it sextiles Pluto, there's gonna be a little bit of a Corvanaut flavor to it, but more harmonious. What is a Corvanaut? For those of you who are not acquainted with my channel, it's a situation where two people, for example, meet and they are coming to transform or change the structures in society at large. I have it with my mom. I think that said literally everything about me to those who know what I'm talking about. I had it in academia, and I have it with the generation of the Pluto that opposes my Sun. It also conjuncts my Saturn. So that is a very hard aspect as well. And some of the year of the 1998 folks, I think, have it opposing my Pluto, which is another Corvanaut. So these encounters with the harmonious aspects is a slight bit lighter, because there's more consent to enter those situations, whereas the squares is like it's crisis, something happening from what seems to be outside, and by the time you get to understand the internal operating forces, a while can pass, okay? And then it looks like there's another crisis on the go. So for some people that hold that intention internally, you might meet an actual Corvanaut. Okay, you might meet a person who's completely on the other side of the Berlin Wall. And with Saturn Neptune, the Berlin Wall is just dissolving. Whoa. So this is a little bit of a Baden Corvanaut. Okay, it's beyond Corvanaut, because there's a Neptune here that mythifies and incarnates the reality, where you ask yourself, what if the prison cell jails, so the jails of the ghetto, were lifted and were dissolving, we're going to be confronting this situation with all the realities that that entails. Okay? It's the thinning of the veil. The fact that Saturn here trines Pluto, we're gonna be having very exciting encounters. You think about a refugee comes from the war, a hostage comes from the war, alive, okay? Now, of course, there's the sheer excitement, and then there is the understanding that entire structures of society need to transform to accommodate. And I've been trying to do what I can around this. But yeah, for example, I'm after Netherlands and after being targeted and so on, I'm at the property and I'm preparing a salve in the narrow kitchen, and it's not a problem usually, because I'm like, I look at the good things and there are abundance of them, and then my mother wants to do tea. So she stands and I'm inside, she stands inside, I'm like, no, get out, don't block the passage. And she didn't know that she now has to accommodate for that. It's a new rule to learn, and in your 70s is a bit difficult, because I came back from the hostage situation that she didn't even know I was in, and I didn't even understand I was in, because the prison cell jails, okay, they were in a Neptunian form, and we're going to see a lot of those as well, talking about the spiritual warfare and so on. And then she has to accommodate. Okay, so I'm back, I'm alive, I didn't die in Netherlands, I didn't die with the situation of the Makler. Not only that, I'm brave enough to, like, if she knew what she's walking into when she walks into the property, she would kill me. It's not like I didn't tell her, but she's so dissociated, and so am I. Because I'm like, I'm going to do my magic to change for the situation of this real estate, okay? Fuck. So when you think about those situations, like, hey, the person is back, it's another person, there needs to be another accommodation, especially if romance is associated with that, okay? Aquarius is such a good archetype to accept, because Aquarius talks about the facets of love, even romantic love, that are genuine friendship and genuine kindness to one another, regardless of one's ability to be, sexual or function in bed, or, okay, it's asking us to learn a different type of love. And that can be mythical quality, because you've been meeting, let's say, a long distance relationship, or your husband came back from being hostage, and guess what, he's looking even hotter than before, and you both been okay, but it's a different reality. He's a different person, different accommodations, things you used to do together, you might not like doing the same. Okay, so there are going to be very moving encounters, and it's a type of, if it is mythified and romantic, there are going to be genuine reality check to that, but the transformative qualities of Pluto can give us a lot of support, where for a lot of people it's not going to be an ending, but the beginning of a new form of love that they were never exposed to before. That is genuine and real, okay? But then the dissolving of the boundaries of our fears, of the walls that we have ensues when it comes to that, and there are going to be implications, okay? Thinking about the fact that, Let's talk about a person who came back from being refugee, or person went out of jail, okay? They have adopted certain style of thinking, of behavior, that they had to adopt to get in that situation. And the unlearning process, first of all, they have to ask themselves, are they willing to unlearn? Is it something that serves them to unlearn? And also, even if they do, it takes a while. For example, I had to unlearn a lot of habits when I was homeless, okay? There are a lot of ways of thinking that you need to unlearn to reopen to abundance, or different type of abundance, okay? And some of these habits, you're like, hey, I don't let go of, let's say, this habit or that habit, or hey, I always keep essential oil bottle with me because I know it's less sensitive. If I have to drink something from the somebody drank, or if I had to eat something that somebody touched the plate, then I have essential oil to remedify that, okay? So, fit for the apocalypse. But then there are other things that are going differently. For example, there are things that like, oh, that reminds me of being homeless, so I don't want to do that, okay? For example, waiting in line or bureaucracy reminds me of concentration camps, so I don't want to do that. I just think it wouldn't, because as homeless you learn that if you have to wait in line, there's nothing to wait in line for. You prefer to be shot. If you have to go meet somebody at that time, it means that they're going to try to extort you for sex, that later is espionage, and then you would be considered traitor and would be executed, and they would be very neglectful of whether you have that with dignity or not. So you don't wait in line, you don't listen to commands, okay? You do the opposite of what they tell you many times. And there are many things where you would have to bridge to one another, because you would see a person is like completely different person from what they were when they come back, okay? And there are different sets of behaviors that fit to different type of contexts. For example, what we call narcissists, or even Aries type of divide and conquer, there are situations where people have to adopt this type of behavior to survive, or to get the fuck out of a situation that's not serving them, okay? And then there are other types of settings where that is not appropriate, and that is actually undermining oneself. So there are gonna be a lot of the falling of the walls, okay? Now, it's also a beginning of a cycle, so there's going to be a lot of new walls, okay, new borders, new boundaries, and that's going to require for new things, and we're going to have to surrender different things, and we're going to have to stand in our power for different things. The trine to Pluto might be dual as well. It might be that certain regulations would be successful, whereas it might mean that certain regulations and restrictions would assist us in surrendering the right things and tapping into our power where we should. So the power point, the tap to our power, is in the Aquarius. It's in, remember, if I take a look at the conversation between me and my makler, okay, this could definitely be my father in terms of age, then I said to him, my word is not less than your word, and my respect is not less than your respect. I say, I could swear that I didn't say that. And I say, you know what? So do I. And I believe you, because some people heard they received commands from Gaza in 7th October. Maybe it was something like that. I believe you, but we need to address this, okay? And he didn't want to talk to me because that was the ending of the conversation. Now the real estate agent, okay, the metavech, needed a metovech, okay? They needed another bridging person to talk to me. And there was a loss of communication here, even further, okay? Because the tactics, their old espionage tactics were not working with me tapping into my power. And you're not going to make of me crazy without being a whistleblower on MK Ultra. And I know exactly that these techniques that you use, they're supposed to be used to release hostages. Instead, you use them not only on me, but on previous woman that was Arabic and lived here and was raped. And perhaps because she was physically raped, she thought that when it happens in the astral, that is somebody else, but this was you. And then you casted this family out. Okay? So while I was worried about the other people that targeted me before that, that's also a reality check. So we're going to be having also for the stand into our power of researching, being scientific about it. Okay, hey, remote viewing is used to release hostages. It's not a woo-woo-wee thingy in the air. It's an actual technique that can be used to release hostages or to bother people. And you take people into account. Hey, you've been doing your espionage on the wrong side of the light, okay? Now, there's also the reality of people who work both for the light and for the dark, the double agents. And mind you, it's not like they choose to do so. So we're going to be tapping into the Aquarius part to take up power back. And wherever Neptune is, there's going to be some sort of surrendering. Okay? Surrendering, manifesting, longing for something. We're going to have new longings upon Neptune ingress to Aries, of course. And they will have to do with the identity. So Saturn adds a bureaucratic flavor to it all. I just tell it as it is. So that is something we want to keep in mind. And Aquarius is to know your rights, to know the science. It's when everybody has a say. So more people are going to take the power back. It's like, hey, I should have a say in the financial system. Credit score, I should have a say. Not the global government decides for me. If the global government is supposed to be inclusive of me, I should have a say here. And if people take their power, even technologically, okay, we can come up with another internet. We can come up with another type of technology. We can come up with another type of community. So, and those things will begin to happen as well. What this restriction is going to be about the sovereignty and the individuality within that process. Okay? So we want to kind of keep that in mind. More on that thinning of the veil. You know, Neptune is also astrology and channeling, and Saturn is regulation and restrictions, but it's also the meetings and encounters between various types of channeling and mediumship and astrology and forms of healing. Okay, so there's going to be a bridging of that as well as certain endings to some things and certain other beginnings. I said astrology is also associated with Uranus, and the more you try to regulate Uranus, the more off the charts it goes. Okay. It's just the nature of Uranus. So this whole thing is going to sextile Uranus, and it's really that there's an element of randomness. Okay, so trying to put things into, a frame, and I talked about the limitation of using astrology for profiling. I assume that a lot are going to try to apply astrology to everyday life, and the nature of astrology is rebellion. So they're going to be both rebellions against astrology, and I think some of them are just. If I take a look at what a Facebook friend of mine had
problem with astrology and channeling, because she was surrounded with MK Ultra and they were forming an entire wall that was meant to keep her down. That's the idea she got of astrology, as much as I got about psychology. And so I think the type of astrology where you learn the astrology yourself, but you're going to dedicate the time to that, is going to be more fruitful than to get a reading, because there's a restriction, okay, I see, that we all see coming, both for the Saturn in Pisces, but also for Aries. Aries is about physical activity, it's about real estate. We're gonna see also the limitation that astrology presents. For example, when it's not right now, let's say I had a problem with the real estate, and it's not a good time to get into a contract, to get into a deal, to change housing. Okay, I'm not going to pick an election with Mars opposing Pluto to start something where Mars symbols my real estate. I'm not going to make it oppose Pluto into anything that I build or that I enter into a new apartment. So what needs to happen in between? Okay, what can happen? It's also the ruler of my ninth. So when it comes to traveling, I run into more of the same problem. So it's very challenging, and I don't say that I have all the answers, but definitely we're going to become more aware of what it's like to have a certain election when it comes to timing and channeling and astrology, or even when we meet a certain person, when we start a certain relationship, when we close a certain deal. The timing is going to matter, especially when it comes to astrological consideration for declarations of independence. You want to do a search on it on my channel, and you want to watch each and every episode. I have seen no astrologer tends to that in the way that I tend to that. Again, I'm not a genius of astrology. It is very basic information, and this very basic information is something that should be the common good. Because you want to make sure that the ruler of the people, in we the people, is placed in a benevolent place for any new identity that is formed right now. Especially if we have a global society, the moon is going to be the global people, okay? And a sun, global leaders, and Uranus will also be very associated with the leaders in such a case. So any such thing, you want to make sure you understand the chart. We do not have a chart for the WEF, okay? We don't have a natal chart for the WEF. It is already illegal not to have a chart for the WEF, okay? So we have to understand how deep ingrained we are talking, because the cults, they do elect every single thing, and they do inversion in the election, inversion in the symbology. It is no longer legal when you talk about a new entity to not have a chart with exact timing of that chart. What does that entail and will entail is a question we'll have to deal with. And the fact that is very nice to say, not legal, but when it comes to enforcing, we run into the inversion of jurisdics, which is another problem. So we have to deal with a lot of the mercurial qualities of the world at large, and of the cults at large, and of astrology, and begin to unlearn certain things and relearn. Okay, for example, 8th house is not house of betrayal of the economy, and the trust funds are not associated with betrayal. Okay, 12th house is not the house of hidden enemy, where we do not practice sex espionage and human trafficking, and we do not tag people psychiatrically for having a crisis that they need actual assistance to, or jail people for that, okay? That's something we need to remember about astrology, okay? Scorpio is not such a deep and dark sign when the water of the well is actually fresh and clean. So we need to forestify the deserts, and we'll have a complete new renovation. And okay, if we leave it all on the Scorpio to transform things, yeah, it gets very dark. Wow. Okay, Pisces, the bottom of the ocean, okay, and so on and so forth. Aries, not so impulsive when it's not neurodivergent, perhaps, okay? And it's not neurodivergent, but it's not consuming neurotoxins even from the soil. So there's gonna be a whole lot of a lot to wait for, okay? And I watch my episode why most of you actually will make it to 2025. And remember that so many of the changes that are happening astrologically, we already need to change that. Okay, we already needed Pluto to move to Aquarius. We already need Neptune to move forward to a fire sign. What is like to have Neptune in a fire sign? The fluid and fire. Okay, but what is going to be? We already need it. You know what? Think about Chiron in Aries versus Neptune in Aries. Chiron is a wound to something. Aries is our ability to self-sustain, to do it all ourselves. Neptune makes it a pandemic that people are not able to do it all themselves. So now what the Chiron has been calling for might be facilitated by Neptune. Uranus going into Gemini already, meeting Sedna, okay? I want to say that I'm quite cautious about the V-shaped Nike symbol in the whole world and Uranus meeting Sedna. Because when Sedna met Beta Persei, it was COVID. When Sedna ingressed into Gemini, it was 7th October. When Sedna and Uranus meet, it means the global betrayal. So that can be a beginning of a new world order there. And again, you want to learn about the hardships of Inuit society, high suicide rates because of incest. Sedna is Inuit goddess. And it's going to trine the Neptune Saturn. Okay, so it begins to make a whole lot more sense now. But certain things absolutely need to change, okay? Unfortunately, before 7th of October, if I ran away from violence, I couldn't get my credit card to an unregistered address. Whereas later I could. It would go through the digital and I would approve through the digital that I got the card and I would identify and so on. So suddenly they could send me to a different address. And there was a couple of months that I was going on without a credit card because of this. It's a debit card, but still. Before 7th of October, if somebody would ask me about job and I would say every time I try to work something happens, they would think, oh great, you're lazy, you don't want to work. 7th of October is like, oh, first there was COVID, then there was Ukraine, then there was pandemic, then there was this, now there's the 7th of October. And I say, well, every time I try to do something, something happens. Then people say, oh, of course. Of course, they don't genuinely understand me, but it's also I don't run into the resistance that I would run in other circumstances. And then other things, there were okay? If you didn't hold a watermelon, then nobody would talk to you. Or just seeing Israeli would get people to, sway away from you. Just because of your nationality, okay? They want you to speak against your country where they're not addressing the 1100 or they're not addressing the elite and the cloning that they might be also a part of. And, they want you to speak against one of your nationalities when it's not like the other nationality didn't plan the whole fucking dumb fuckery for several decades. And that red of the Marxist is Rothschild. So that also happened. And people expect you to betray your country, but they don't betray the cult. So that also happened. So that was another facet of that Sedna. Uranus Sedna, we're going to feel that, okay, on a global level. And Sedna is a lot about who do we honor, okay? who do we honor when it comes to Sedna? Think about COVID. Sedna beta per se. Do we honor the regulations? Some of us had no choice, okay? We needed to fly, so we needed to inject weird things into our body. That may cause Alzheimer, it may cause fertility issues, it may cause many things, okay? What do we supposedly betray, okay? Okay, remember when we had Ruth breaking the no touch, okay, at the Tweede Kamer? So, yes, that was a memorable moment. And so our sets of honorings with Sedna, we're going to have to reconsider them. When are we betraying ourselves when we're honoring something? And it's going to be different. With Uranus, it's about ideals, especially of the global thingies. Okay? Think about, I'm going to bring up the red issue again because it is important. Think about the football teams that are red and are loyal to the red and not to the country, what that entails. And think about the fact that the red is Rothschild. And most of these groups are supposed to represent the working class. And so, you see, it's going to trigger a lot of spirits, I know, because we talk about the deep issues of betrayal. And the fact that, of course, they turn red on red. Okay, like Jaguar said with black music industry, they turn black on black for what you call Jewish money. Is actually the Vatican, because they cut dividends to the Vatican, means they pay protection to the Vatican. Who you pay protection to is the boss that decides for your actions. If Rothschild and Rockefeller pay protection to the Vatican, then, okay, then all the keepers don't play. Fuck. But it's the Vatican that we should look at. The keeper, the white keeper here, is the one to look at, in my opinion. Of course, there can be hidden facets to this. Okay? So this is structure. But the Rabobank is a cooperative. And Pluto hadn't even. So with Sedna Uranus, there's going to be an issue of global betrayal and honoring betrayal of ideals. Together with the Saturn Neptune, this one can be the breaking of a dream. It's the breaking of a myth. But if that thing was in the back of your mind and you didn't see how to turn black on black and red on red for Rosie, then you might have entered certain alliances that are not so in cahoots with what would serve you. And the biggest alliance is basically the alliance of the cult of betrayal. And it's a global cult, okay? Also those child trafficking and what's not. That together with Pluto is the time where we gotta really see a lot of both attempts to glorify and globalify and mythify that cult, and the countering, okay, the countering of even so much as persecution of these people of the cult, that both will be glorified as the crusade, okay, the crucified warriors and saviors of humanity, but also they're going to be a reality check to that, where, hey, if we've been practicing as humanity these horrid things, there's nothing to glorify about making a cult over it and globalifying and going viral with child sacrifice and so on. But actually do need a refreshing start, a refreshing new beginning. That's good for everyone, and everybody pretty much knows that. But when it comes to loyalties and honors and all kind of things that brought Tachi to ask a Delano Polish guy, a Moroccan drug lord, to ask a Polish assassin to hit the Dutch person that spoke most for Moroccan people in the Netherlands, okay, over a WHO. That was worse, that was bad for Tachi more so than it was for Peter. To be very honest, that Peter spoke against the WHO. I mean, he definitely knew that they're going to assassinate everyone, but it wasn't as terrible for him as much as it would be for a drug lord. You got to say what you got to say, okay? So that was around an alliance of betrayal that happened with Sedna going on a better per se with the moon of Netherlands. Now, Peter couldn't explain it to us in so many words when he was running for politics in 2014-15, and because he had to also vouch for a guy that was doing quite some things to quite some girls and boys, allegedly, it was a very difficult conversation to be had. What is wrong with making that viral, because you had to admit that this happens, and to make people understand that would add quite some careers, including Peter's. If only because he vouched for a guy that, okay, was involved filmographically. So, you see, this is both incarnating of a dream, okay? You're being vouched for, you're being seen, you're being heard, and it's also, with Saturn, there's a little bit of a karma here. And you want to be aware of false karmas, because Saturn Neptune is false karmas. Never have I ever seen so many discussions about attempts to swap destinies as during the time of Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is karma, and Pisces is something that is imagined or false, as well as the real, okay? So we want to be aware of the false karmas as well, of putting the wrong person to trial for, crimes, and that would entail jail with Saturn, and for quite some periods, okay? This can be a 28-year confiscation. This is some real time, okay? Saturn takes a while to surround the zodiac, and Neptune even more. So if I think about, okay, the karmas of the story of baby scene, now calming, okay, to both understand the fact that before Peter de Vries vouched for the Supreme Court judge that, okay, perhaps put the wrong drug lord in jail for murder and harming children. There was also another case, okay, the Peter Ort case, which I talked about, that should not be forgotten as well. And at the same time, what was to be had with Hussein Baby Sin now culminates to Tahi representing himself, because he found a no lawyer that doesn't represent those who are accused of crimes, sex crimes against children. Wow. Okay, so you think about what the false karma, and you think about also the karma to the false karma. Fuck. Very, very intricate. And Mars is another law and litigation and persecution sign, okay? Mars adds the fiscal. If Saturn is the debt, Mars adds the action, okay? The juristic action, the verdict. Unfortunately, can also be the execution. Both Saturn and Mars, okay? It is also about real estate. It is about, unfortunately, yes, also rape. War crimes, war crimes, war crimes, war crimes, war crimes, okay? There are many people in the cult Saturn that were told you will be able to get away with everything, and it also followed through, might be surprised. And I'm going to say another thing about banking, when I talked about the subprime, surprise, okay? And the surprise is twofold, because some of the surprise is planned, but it's always an unplanned to the planned. So those are all things we want to keep in mind while we're at it, because they're going to turn out very valuable to look at the course of time and how things change along time. Okay, so there are going to be a lot of endings to things that people could get away with, and a lot of things that now you can get away with what you couldn't. There can also be debt forgiving as much as it can be enforcing debt. Okay, and how is debt forgiving funded? By enforcing another type of debt that you need to collect, right? Not in all cases, but in many cases. Of course, you could print money, but it's also, we think about the fake debt and the real debt. And you think about charging for something that we didn't charge before to fund something that we didn't fund before. So that will also be and begin to become a thing, and to certain frauds, okay, but beginning of others, okay. Real estate frauds are going to boom, but there's also going to be karma to previous real estate frauds. Whoa. Now, with Uranus, there's going to be very unexpected unfolding of the entire attempt to build ghettos. And unexpected is unexpected. For example, those may be unexpected cities. For example, it was unexpected to me that Itamar Yaron sent somebody to threaten me that they would kidnap me to the city that affected me most in childhood, basically to death and concentration camp. Okay? For some people that live in Israel, it's still very weird that they're planning to do death and concentration camps in the cities, and it's already begun. The homeless in Oregon, the homeless in the United States, the violation of the First Amendment. Okay, you might wake up one day to a shocking reality where you have death and concentration camps in your own city that nobody covered, and you were just busy working 10-time jobs. Okay? To buy almonds at the 7-Eleven. Because Whole Foods is expensive. And so your bionic almonds have been deceiving you, not just in their sense that they might not be whole food, but also in the sense that there's a ghetto in your city and you didn't even know it. People were saying a lot about the Germans. They were sitting side by side to a ghetto and they had no idea what's going on there. Now those people are you and me, because there are ghettos in our cities and we have no idea what's going on there. And we don't even know where the ghettos are. It's existing. It's not was, it's existing. It's now, and existing maybe for decades, and we didn't know about this. Fuck. Okay, Pluto is going to put it in the air. Airports in general, anything to do with the air, going on air is going to be fascinating. And when I say fascinating, I don't mean in a casual or vacational way. I mean fascinating, like when a person is not sure if they had the most terrible nightmare, the most terrible experience, or the most very weird reality that had both really fascinating and glamorous and joyous and weird and horrified things with it. And that's the type of fascinating that I mean, because it's Pluto going on air. Science is going to be very important because all the sciences to make sure you will see certain image and be shocked and bewildered, let's say, of a person wiping their nose in public without a toilet paper, but you won't see how many children buried with living children in, okay, under the very places that we call worship places, hospitals and stuff like that, either because you would not see the images or because of the juxtaposition, or the way of the presentation, or just that the editing of the picture would be just more gruesome for a person that had no toilet paper when they were homeless or in a place and they just wiped their nose without using a toilet paper. Okay, it's gross, I agree, but think about those type of gross and those type of embarrassing versus those type of embarrassing. Mercury's footage. Revolution of the frame. Now, with those things, we all have to keep in mind that we are all in for surprises, as with Uranus. Okay, when I was tending to the missing and kidnapped people and children and satanic ritual abuse, and I thought, where are the children? I did not think I would see them as the head of NATO, the Orange Jesus, the guy that runs X, that's now the new Volt Safer Starlink, that's Elon, my parliament members in both countries, okay, celebrities, journalists, okay. I did not think that this would be the answer. And that definitely gave me some proportions that do not negate the fact that, you know, they do not negate the lethality of the things that I've been through. And I need to take them into account when we think about solving a problem and addressing a problem. So the first addressing of these death camps to those children. While not negating our own safety. And what does it even mean to address? Okay, what do we do? Saturn, Neptune in 0-degree Aries is going to be making this mythical question very real. And the element of dissociation with dealing to missing things. Yet, and some of my pets may have been sacrificed in a ritual satanic abuse, and I didn't even have the ability to get up to try to ask people. And the overwhelm of everything, where you don't know if the people that you ask are not the people that did that. And the fatigue associated with that. Gives a lot of reality check to what we have considered the missing, for the fact that there is a satellite system that knows exactly where they are in each second of the day. And then we think about having information and what can we do with that. And Mars is the planet of action. Uranus is going to be a booming of information. And it's a Saturn, Neptune on the Mars. It's the what can we do with that that's going to need sustained action and surrendering. Okay, we're going to practically learn how to rescue people and things. And the praxis of search and rescue and facing a lot of death is going to be very real for some people. Okay, 7th October, one of the shocks that I had, and mind you, I live in Israel, so that was the privileged part of the 7th October. because ritual human sacrifice is not what it is a global thing, so it took place globally. And the thing is that the first thing we did on Facebook, okay, was like, okay, searching for missing people. So we had a list of people and we were passing them around. I don't know what happened about the 20 missing people in The Hague, but we have Starlink, and we didn't even think about Starlink back then. So you think about the praxis, okay, your village might be the next, and what you're busy doing, okay, search and rescue, passing name lists to people, or people trying to contact people, okay, sending some nice photographs of sweet animals so that people will, and then finding that, oh, there are pets that you need to rescue as well. And the reality of the search and rescue, okay? Because Mars is taking action, Neptune is something missing, and Saturn is reality. The reality of taking action about what is missing. I've been facing that with my pets, and the fact that you have to surrender so many things. And I'm going to my Neptune square at the time. The ingress is 1 degree away from my Neptune, so I'm beginning my Neptune square at the time. That's if I survive Saturn going over my ascendant. Good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? So yeah, there's Neptune coming. There's a lot of exciting things, a lot of reality checks, and they come juxtaposed, okay, all together.